Ethan Carter had flown through many parts of the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for what he saw that day. His small exploration ship drifted over the rocky surface of a distant planet. The sky was a strange shade of green, and the mountains in the distance looked like sharp teeth. Ethan adjusted the controls and looked at the readings on his screen. Something was not right. There was a distress signal coming from deep inside a crystal cavern that stretched below the mountains. No human had ever set foot there, and few alien explorers had dared to go near it. Ethan felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. He knew he could not ignore the signal. He landed his ship carefully on a flat area near the cavern. Dust and tiny rocks rolled down from the cliffs as the wind blew sharply. Ethan pulled on his suit, checked his tools, and grabbed a portable scanner. The signal was getting stronger. He started walking toward the entrance, each step echoing in the hollow silence of the planet. The crystals around the cavern sparkled faintly, reflecting the green light from the sky. They were beautiful, but Ethan knew they could be dangerous. Crystal shards were sharp, and the terrain could collapse at any moment. As he entered the cavern, the signal grew louder. It was rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Ethan followed it carefully, moving around large crystal formations. He had to duck under low ceilings and step over jagged rocks. The air was cold and thin, but his suit kept him alive. Soon, he saw a figure trapped under a fallen crystal wall. It was a young alien woman with pale blue skin and long silver hair. She struggled to move, her eyes wide with fear. Her armor was cracked, and she looked exhausted. Ethan realized immediately who she was. This had to be Princess Lyra of the Korthan Empire. Only someone important like her would trigger such a strong distress signal. "Hold on," Ethan said softly, approaching carefully. "I'm here to help." The princess looked at him, disbelief in her eyes. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice weak but clear. "I'm Ethan. I'm a human. I saw your signal and came to rescue you." She tried to speak, but the pain made her fall silent. Ethan studied the situation. The crystal wall was heavy, and there was no way he could lift it alone. He quickly examined the surrounding area and noticed a set of fractured supports. With some clever thinking, he used a combination of his tools and a small explosion to break the wall into smaller pieces. Sparks flew, and dust filled the air, but slowly the wall started to give way. Princess Lyra watched him carefully. Humans were not common in her world, and she had heard stories about their recklessness. But this human moved with skill and caution. He was not reckless. He was precise. Ethan finally lifted the last piece of crystal and helped Lyra free her arm. She winced in pain, but she could move now. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan nodded, but there was no time for gratitude. The cavern was unstable, and more crystals threatened to fall. He helped her stand and led her toward the exit. The journey out was not easy. The floor was slippery, and sharp crystals jutted from the walls. Ethan held Lyra's hand to steady her. He could feel her small trembling as they moved. "You're safe now," he said calmly. "Just a little further." They reached a large open space inside the cavern, but the ground shook suddenly. A chunk of ceiling fell, narrowly missing them. Ethan pushed Lyra aside and felt a sharp pain in his shoulder from the impact. He ignored it, focusing on getting her out. His training and quick thinking allowed them to avoid the worst of the falling debris. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the exit. Sunlight spilled over the jagged rocks and fresh air filled their lungs. Lyra looked at Ethan with a mixture of relief and awe. "You saved me," she said softly. "No one from my world would have come here." Ethan shrugged, trying to make light of the situation. "I guess humans have their uses," he said with a small smile. She gave him a faint smile in return, though she was still pale and weak. He led her to his ship, helping her climb inside and strap her in. As the engines powered up, Ethan examined her armor. It was damaged beyond repair. He removed some pieces carefully and checked her vitals. "You're going to be okay," he said. "I'll get you back to safety." Lyra nodded, trusting him more than she would have expected. Humans were unpredictable, but Ethan had shown courage and skill. She realized that this human might be different from the stories she had heard. The flight back to her capital was tense. The planet's atmosphere was unstable, and turbulence shook the ship repeatedly. Ethan remained calm, adjusting the controls with precision. Lyra watched him quietly, noting how focused and determined he was. He was not just strong, he was smart and brave. She had never seen anyone like him. They finally left the planet's atmosphere and entered a clear space corridor. Ethan allowed himself a small sigh of relief. The worst was over, but he knew the dangers were far from gone. When they arrived at the Corthan capital, a fleet of royal ships met them. Queen Marisol had been informed of her daughter's peril and had sent her guards to intercept any threats. Ethan guided the ship down, careful not to draw too much attention. As the ship landed, Lyra stepped out, her legs still weak but steady. The royal guards approached, eyes wary and suspicious. Ethan raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. "I'm here to help the princess. She's safe now," he said. Lyra stood beside him, her expression firm. "He saved my life," she said. The guards hesitated, looking between them. Such words from a princess carried weight, but humans were often viewed with distrust. The queen herself arrived moments later, flanked by advisors and soldiers. She was tall, regal, and imposing. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, fixed on Ethan. "You are the human who rescued my daughter?" she asked. Her tone was calm but carried authority. Ethan nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. I could not ignore the distress signal." The queen studied him for a long moment. Ethan noticed the slight narrowing of her eyes, the way her fingers twitched on her robes. She was grateful that her daughter survived, but there was something in her gaze that warned him he was not entirely welcome. "You have done something no human has ever done," she said slowly. "You have saved the life of my daughter. For that I am thankful. But I must consider the safety of my kingdom." Ethan nodded, understanding. "I only wanted to help," he said quietly. Lyra reached out and touched his arm, a silent gesture of gratitude. The queen's gaze softened slightly when she looked at Lyra. "You are lucky," she said to her daughter. "You have survived because of his courage. But know this, human. Your presence here will not be without consequences." Ethan's stomach tightened. He had saved her life, but now it seemed he had entered a new challenge. The queen's words hinted at rules he had not yet learned. He would have to navigate alien politics, suspicion, and the dangers that lay ahead. But for now, the princess was safe, and that was all that mattered. As night fell over the capital, Ethan sat in a small guest chamber assigned to him by the queen. He thought about what had just happened and what was to come. Humans were not often welcomed in alien empires, yet he had just earned the trust of one of the most important individuals in the galaxy. He felt a strange mix of pride and apprehension. Outside his window, the city lights of the Corthan capital shimmered like jewels, and he knew that his journey was only beginning. Princess Lyra rested in her chamber, still recovering from the ordeal. She could not stop thinking about the human who had saved her. Ethan had shown courage, skill, and intelligence that even her people rarely possessed. She wondered what it would mean for her world to have such an ally, a human who was not only brave, but clever. As she drifted to sleep, she made a silent promise to learn more about him and the strange world he came from. Ethan, meanwhile, reviewed his tools and made notes on the crystal cavern. He realized that humans had much to offer the Corthans, strategies, engineering skills, and quick thinking that could change the balance of power in their empire. He did not yet understand the Queen's plans, but he knew he would face them with the same courage that had led him to the cavern. For the first time in his life, he felt that humanity could make a real difference far beyond Earth. The night passed quietly, but both Ethan and Lyra knew that the events of this day would change their lives forever. One had saved the other, and in doing so, they had set a chain of events in motion that would bring humans and Korthans closer than ever before. Outside the palace walls, the stars stretched endlessly, promising adventure, danger, and the possibility that a human could truly be a hero among the stars. The next morning, Ethan awoke to a soft knock on his door. A palace attendant entered, bowing slightly. "Sir, the Queen requests your presence," she said. Ethan nodded, quickly adjusting his clothing and preparing himself. He had no idea what to expect. Yesterday had been full of danger and uncertainty, and now he was being summoned by the ruler of an entire alien empire. The corridor leading to the throne room was wide and polished, reflecting the strange green light from the crystal ceiling above. Ethan walked carefully, noticing the guards who eyed him with suspicion. Humans were unusual visitors in this place, and many of the palace staff had never met one in person. Whispers followed him wherever he went, and he could feel the weight of dozens of alien eyes on him. Despite that, he kept his head high. He had saved the princess, and that was not a small feat. He entered the throne room and immediately noticed Queen Marisol. She sat tall and imposing, her silver hair flowing over her shoulders like a river of moonlight. Her eyes were sharp, calculating, and filled with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Beside her, Princess Lyra watched silently, her pale blue eyes filled with concern and admiration. Ethan bowed slightly, keeping his hands visible to show he meant no harm. "Human," the Queen said, her voice calm but firm. "You have done something that no human has ever done. You have risked your life for my daughter." Ethan nodded. "I did what anyone would do if they saw someone in danger," he said honestly. He did not expect gratitude. He expected careful judgment and perhaps suspicion. Queen Marisol's eyes softened slightly when they flicked to Lyra. "She is alive because of you, that I cannot deny. But your presence here cannot be taken lightly." Ethan frowned slightly. "I don't understand," he said. "I only want to help. I can leave once she is safe." The Queen's expression did not change. "That is not how it works in my empire," she said. "Humans are unpredictable. Your courage is clear, but your motives are unknown. For now you will remain within the palace. Your presence will ensure the princess's safety. You may not leave without my permission." Ethan's stomach tightened. He had not expected this. To be trapped here, far from home, by an alien queen, was unsettling. Princess Lyra stepped forward. "Mother, he saved me. He did not do it for power or glory. I trust him. Please let him stay freely." The Queen's gaze shifted to her daughter. "Lyra, your safety is my responsibility. This human may be brave, but he is also from a world I do not fully understand." Lyra's lips pressed together, frustrated. She wanted to argue, but the Queen's authority was absolute. Ethan, sensing the tension, chose to speak carefully. "Your Majesty," he said calmly, "I understand your caution. I only want to help and protect the princess. I will respect your rules, but I ask for trust. I will not bring harm to you or your empire." Queen Marisol studied him for a long moment. Humans were not usually this composed. Most would have begged or made excuses, but Ethan's quiet confidence and honesty made her think. She nodded slowly. "Very well," she said finally. "You will remain within the palace. You may assist the princess and her household, but do not overstep your bounds. Guards will monitor your movements." Ethan bowed again. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said, though he knew he was still far from freedom. Life in the palace was not easy. Ethan quickly discovered that the alien staff regarded him with suspicion. Some whispered behind his back, others avoided him entirely. He found that even small tasks were met with scrutiny. When he repaired a broken light in the princess's room, a servant accused him of damaging it on purpose. When he studied the palace maps, an advisor suggested he was trying to find secret passages. Ethan learned to work carefully, speaking politely and proving his intentions through actions rather than words. Princess Lyra became his closest ally. She would visit him often, sitting by a small window in his assigned room, and ask questions about Earth, about humans, and about his life before the stars. Ethan told her simple stories about deserts, oceans, and forests, about human cities and space programs. She listened eagerly, fascinated by the differences and the courage that humans showed in dangerous situations. In return, she taught him about Corthan culture, the royal court, and the complex rules that governed her world. One day, while walking through the palace gardens, Ethan noticed a group of palace officials watching him closely. He could feel their judgment. They doubted him, believed him to be a spy or perhaps a threat. One of them approached Lyra while Ethan was nearby and whispered something. She looked up at him, her eyes worried. "They are planning to challenge your presence," she said quietly. "Some in the court think humans are weak and dangerous at the same time." Ethan frowned. He was not used to being doubted, especially when he had risked his life for someone else. "Then we need to show them otherwise," he said. "Not with anger, but with skill. Humans may be different, but we have ways to solve problems that others cannot see." Lyra nodded, admiration in her eyes. Together, they began to devise small improvements for the palace. Ethan fixed machinery that had been broken for decades, repaired old defense systems, and even created tools that helped palace workers do their jobs faster and more safely. Slowly, the palace staff began to notice. Queen Marisol watched these developments with interest. She remained cautious, but could not deny the changes Ethan brought. The palace seemed more efficient, safer, and even more beautiful because of his work. Yet she still reminded herself of the unknown qualities of humans. "He is skilled," she told an advisor one evening. "But skill alone does not make him trustworthy. We must watch him closely." Despite the Queen's caution, Ethan and Lyra grew closer. They shared quiet conversations in the garden, explored hidden corridors of the palace, and even exchanged small gifts. Lyra gave him a delicate crystal pendant, telling him it was a symbol of protection. Ethan gave her a small device from Earth that projected holographic stars, showing her world she had never imagined. Through these small acts, a bond formed between them, one built on trust, respect, and admiration. But tension in the palace grew. Rival factions saw Ethan as an outsider and a threat to their influence over the princess. They spread rumors, claiming he was here to spy on the empire or influence royal decisions. Ethan ignored the whispers, focusing instead on helping and protecting Lyra. He knew that any action that saved lives or improved the palace would speak louder than words. One evening, an alarm rang throughout the palace. Ethan and Lyra rushed to the control room and saw a small group of armed figures attempting to enter restricted areas. They were palace rebels seeking to undermine the Queen and capture Lyra. Ethan acted immediately. He used his knowledge of Earth defense systems combined with the palace technology to block doors, alert guards, and create safe escape routes. He moved calmly, directing Lyra and the guards to safety while isolating the intruders. When the situation was resolved, the Queen arrived, her expression a mix of concern and relief. She turned to Ethan. "You have proven yourself once again. You are not just a human who acts recklessly. You are clever, resourceful, and brave." Ethan bowed, grateful but careful. "I only did what I could to protect the princess," he said. Lyra smiled, her trust in him stronger than ever. Despite this, Queen Marisol did not grant him freedom. "You have earned respect," she said, "but your presence is still required. Humans are still unknown to many here. For now you will remain in the palace." Ethan understood. Freedom would have to wait. He also realized that life here, though complicated, gave him a chance to show humanity's true value: courage, intelligence, and heart. Days turned into weeks. Ethan continued to repair, improve, and protect, earning small victories with each challenge. He and Lyra explored the palace's ancient libraries, studied alien machines, and even found ways to make the palace guards more efficient. Slowly, suspicion among the staff began to fade, replaced by cautious respect. Some even asked him questions about Earth, eager to learn from the human who had saved a princess and outsmarted palace rebels. Ethan knew that staying in the palace was only the beginning. The Korthan Empire was vast, full of challenges, politics, and danger. But he also knew that humans had unique strengths that could make a difference. And with Lyra by his side, he began to see a future where Earth and the Korthans could work together. For now, though, his focus was simple: keep the princess safe, prove the worth of humanity, and survive the careful watch of the queen and her advisors. The night sky above the palace was filled with unfamiliar stars, but Ethan looked at them with determination. He had come to a strange world, faced dangers he had never imagined, and earned the trust of a princess. The queen might still be wary, and the court might still doubt him, but he knew one thing: humans could be heroes, even among alien worlds, and this was only the beginning of his journey. Life in the palace grew more complicated for Ethan with each passing day. Though Queen Marisol had allowed him to stay, many in the court still viewed him with suspicion. Whispers followed him wherever he went, and servants sometimes ignored his presence or deliberately gave him wrong instructions. Ethan had learned to be patient. He understood that trust was earned through actions, not words. He focused on his work, his main goal being the safety of Princess Lyra and proving that humans were capable allies. Lyra often met him in the palace gardens or the libraries, seeking companionship and conversation. She was curious about his world and often asked questions about Earth. "Do humans always act this bravely?" she asked one afternoon, watching him repair a broken water filtration system that had been neglected for decades. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow and smiled. "No, most humans are cautious. But when someone's life is at risk, many of us try our best." Lyra looked thoughtful. "You are different from what I imagined humans to be. You think, you plan, and you act wisely. You are not reckless." Ethan shrugged. "I just do what needs to be done." Despite the quiet moments, tension in the palace was rising. Several high-ranking officials did not like the idea of a human living among them, especially one who had gained the trust of the princess. They feared that Ethan might influence the queen's decisions or take control of important matters. Some even whispered that he might be a spy for Earth, sent to learn secrets of the Korthan Empire. Ethan ignored the rumors at first, focusing on his duties, but he soon realized that caution was necessary. One morning, Ethan discovered a problem in the palace's defense system. Certain sections of the palace walls were failing, and intruders could easily enter if not repaired. He reported the issue to the chief engineer, an older Korthan named Virek, who scoffed at him. "This is not your concern, human," Virek said. "You are here to watch the princess, not meddle in palace matters." Ethan remained calm. "If these defenses fail, the princess will be in danger. I cannot ignore it." Virek looked at him for a moment, then muttered something under his breath and walked away. Ethan worked through the night, using tools and knowledge from Earth to reinforce the walls and improve security measures. By morning, the palace's defenses were stronger than they had been in decades. When Queen Marisol inspected the repairs, she was impressed. "You have done more than expected," she said. "Your skills are valuable, human. Perhaps humans are not as fragile as many believe." Ethan nodded humbly. "I only want to help," he said. Lyra, who had been watching from the side, smiled proudly. She had no doubt that Ethan was extraordinary. Not everyone in the palace welcomed these improvements. Virek and several other officials grew increasingly hostile. They began plotting behind the Queen's back, hoping to remove Ethan or prove that he was dangerous. One evening, Ethan overheard part of a conversation while passing through a corridor. Two officials were discussing ways to discredit him, claiming that his presence was bringing bad luck and instability. Ethan did not confront them immediately. He knew that acting rashly could make things worse. Instead, he decided to remain vigilant and let his actions speak for themselves. As the days passed, Ethan also noticed a new threat. Small, subtle sabotage attempts began to appear. A supply of medical equipment went missing, alarms malfunctioned, and doors locked without explanation. Each time, Ethan investigated quietly, using his understanding of mechanics and human reasoning to uncover the cause. In each instance, he was able to prevent harm, often before anyone else even noticed. Lyra was amazed by his attention to detail and the way he solved problems that others could not. "You see what others cannot," she said one evening. "You are not just brave. You are smart in ways our people rarely are." Ethan smiled but said nothing. Actions, not words, mattered here. One day, the Queen summoned Ethan to a private chamber. The room was quiet, and sunlight filtered through crystal windows. Queen Marisol regarded him carefully. "Ethan, your skills have proven useful," she said. "But there are still those in my court who question your presence. You must be careful. Any misstep could give your enemies the opportunity to remove you." Ethan nodded. "I understand, Your Majesty. I will act carefully and continue to protect the princess." She studied him silently for a moment before speaking again. "You may also teach the palace guards some of your methods. If they see your usefulness firsthand, they may begin to respect humans more." Ethan agreed. Over the next few weeks, Ethan began training the palace guards. He taught them techniques for strategy, observation, and quick thinking, using simple methods that humans found effective. At first, many guards resisted, thinking human ways were too simple or weak. But when Ethan demonstrated the methods in practice, showing how they could avoid ambushes and secure the palace more efficiently, the guards began to follow him. Even some of the more skeptical officials started to see the value of human ingenuity. Meanwhile, Lyra and Ethan spent more time together, exploring the palace's old libraries and hidden corridors. They discovered ancient texts that described battles, diplomacy, and strange technologies that Corthans had forgotten over time. Ethan was fascinated by the complexity and ingenuity of her people, while Lyra was fascinated by his ability to understand and apply concepts in new ways. Together, they found ways to combine human methods with Corthan knowledge, creating solutions that neither could have achieved alone. However, not all was calm. One night, Ethan detected unusual movement outside the palace walls, using a combination of Corthan sensors and his own devices. He woke Lyra and alerted the guards. Shadows moved across the gardens, and small groups of armed figures tried to sneak into restricted areas. Ethan acted quickly, using knowledge of the palace layout and human tactics to block entrances and guide the guards. The intruders were caught before reaching the princess, but it was clear that this was no random attack. Someone inside the palace had helped them. The queen was furious. She called a meeting with her advisors and Ethan. "This is unacceptable," she said. "We must find the traitor who dares endanger my daughter." Ethan remained calm. "I can help," he said. "We need to study the patterns, the movements, and the timing. Most likely someone with access to the inner palace is involved." He began investigating, carefully analyzing guard schedules, door logs, and records of supplies. Slowly, he identified a few officials whose behavior was suspicious. With Lyra's help, Ethan confronted the intruders and revealed their plots. Some officials were caught trying to communicate with outside rebels, while others had been secretly sabotaging palace defenses. Queen Marisol watched in silence as Ethan explained each step, demonstrating how humans could detect patterns and think several moves ahead. For the first time, she felt that humans were not merely fragile creatures. They had strength of mind, creativity, and courage, qualities her people respected but rarely saw in outsiders. After the crisis, the palace was quieter. Trust in Ethan grew, not only from the guards but also from some of the officials who had doubted him. Lyra's admiration deepened, and she began to see a future where humans and Corthans could work together. Even Queen Marisol acknowledged his value, though she remained cautious. "Humans are still unknown," she said one evening. "But this one has proven himself." Ethan understood her caution. One human could not change all perceptions overnight, but one human could start the process, and he was determined to do so. Ethan also realized something about himself. He had entered a world far from Earth, faced dangers he had never imagined, and earned the trust of a princess and parts of an alien empire. He had proven that courage, intelligence, and careful planning could allow humans to survive and even thrive among alien species. But more than that, he had discovered that humans could teach, help, and inspire others, something that words alone could never convey. As the sun set over the palace, Ethan and Lyra walked through the gardens. The sky was painted with colors neither had seen on Earth. "You have changed this place," Lyra said softly. "Not with force, but with thought and action. You are not like other humans I have heard about." Ethan smiled. "I only do what I can. That is all any human can do." She reached for his hand, a quiet gesture of trust and friendship. Ethan knew the journey was far from over. Challenges awaited, both from within the palace and beyond. But he also knew that humans had something unique to offer: courage, creativity, and determination that could not be measured by size or strength. For the first time, he felt that humanity had a place among the stars, and he had a role in shaping that future. The night deepened, and the palace lights shimmered like jewels. Ethan stood on the balcony, looking at the stars and thinking of Earth, of home, and of the path that had led him here. The Corthan Empire was vast, filled with politics, danger, and wonder. But he was ready. Humans could face the unknown, adapt, and survive. And now, among alien worlds, he had a chance to show exactly what humanity could do.